Also, hopefully my internet holds up because I'm doing this from the laptop because my webcam died just last week.
Oh,
So I
I was
need to
gonna
get
say
a
it's a
new
little
one.
different angle this time.
Yeah, I know it's very nasally, directly up. It burns the nostrils.
No bats in the
Okay, so
cave. You're clear.
okay, yeah, no hanabata. Do you know that phrase, Brad?
I don't. I don't.
Hanabata. It hana is nose in Japanese, and butter is Hawaiian Pidgin English for butter. So nose butter.
Oh, I
No
like that. I
hanabata.
like that.
Yeah, so it's Pidgin English for bat in the cave. Anyway,
Yep.
that's enough vamping. So now comes the part of the show where I get to intro us. So I'll say, "Hi, I'm Trevor, and welcome to Catching Up on Cinema." If you're not familiar with the program, Catching Up on Cinema is a film analysis podcast where we introduce each other to films, expand our cinematic horizons, and, in essence, catch up on our cinema. So it is the month of, well, it's June. June 30th, in fact, the very end of the month. We got it in, folks. It's the month of June 2024. As once again, that very special time of the month, we're going to do our very special Tales from the Shelf episode. And in joining me in this endeavor, I have my good buddy Brad from the Cinema Speak podcast. How's it going, Brad?
It's going great. Good to be here. I mean, like you said, it is the end of the month. We're getting it in right under the wire there. But I said we got to do it. We got to do another Tales from the Shelf this month. And thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for poking me and helping me arrange this here at the very end of the month. It is one of my favorite things we do with the podcast. Always happy to sit down and talk some movies with you, Brad. It's been a very busy month for both of us, so it is kind of a mini miracle that we were able to pull this off. But yeah, the theme for today's discussion, which we do tend to have an overarching theme when we do our Tales from the Shelf discussions, is going to be a little something that I like to call brushes to blockbusters. So what that entails is brushes is alluding to paintbrushes. So all through July on Catching Up on Cinema, we're going to be talking about movies that have been directed by folks that were promoted up through the art department or the design department of the film industry. So basically, people that are pretty handy when it comes to the visual design aspects of everything, really, and taking a look at what their films look like when they are in the director's chair. A lot of times, it doesn't end up being the best of movies, but because of their background, a lot of times from a visual standpoint, they very much dedicate a lot of their resources and time into perfecting that aspect of the film. So it's just kind of an excuse to explore some of the more talented and interesting individuals that have had that particular career path. So, as is the norm here on Catching Up on Cinema, uh, I'm going to toss Brad, my guest, directly under the bus and ask that, hey, Brad, how about you be the first one to share one of your brushes to blockbusters picks? So, what artist or what film are we going to be talking about first here, Brad?
Well, like you said, you've had this planned out for a little longer than I've had time to assemble my picks. So some of my picks might be very loose in terms of this theme, but I'll start strong. A pick that I think does undeniably, I mean, maybe you'll deny it. I don't know. We'll see. But I think undeniably, I think fits this theme. Now, I don't know if he's ever used a literal paintbrush. I'm sure he has, but I'm pulling off two movies from this director who started as a visual effects artist, and I think most prominently worked on the Star Wars films. And I'm talking about the legendary auteur Joe Johnston. Joe
Oh,
Johnston. And the two movies I'm pulling off for him are Jurassic Park 3 and Jumanji. Jurassic Park 3 in Blu-ray, Jumanji in 4K. I also own this one on Blu-ray as well, but I love Jumanji, so I had to upgrade. Um, Joe Johnston, I know he's kind of like uh, looked at as like, the second tier Spielberg. Like he certainly has a Spielbergian vibe to him. Obviously, he directed Jurassic Park 3, so he's right in there with him. And I want to say he worked on some sort of he did work under him on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So obviously he worked with Lucas and Spielberg and all that. So no surprise that there's a lot of similarities there. But I mean, he's not a great filmmaker by any means, but I think he's pretty good for the most part. Like, I mean, looking at his movies he's made, maybe not counting the last few or whatever. Like, I grew up on Jumanji, watched it a ton when I was a kid. So I have a little bit of a, a nostalgia uh thing for it, but I do think it's a pretty solid movie. I think it's a great concept. I think it's a lot of fun to watch. I think it's executed well. And Jurassic Park 3 isn't amazing, but I do think it's decent. Like, I don't think it's an embarrassment to the franchise or anything like that. Although, to be fair, I give every Jurassic movie a free pass, so take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, even like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I really like. Um, let's see. He also did, of course, Nutcracker and the Four Realms, the classic. Hidalgo. He did Hidalgo, the Wolfman, the Rocketeer, which I haven't seen. That one I haven't seen. I can't comment on it, but
Really?
yeah, I've never seen the
Wow.
Rocketeer. Yeah, but I mean, he's just like he's like a second tier. He's like the B team, and he's like captain of the B team. If Spielberg is captain of the A team, he's captain of the B team, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think he's got a pretty good body of work where I think he can be proud of himself. I would say Jumanji is my personal favorite of his. But I mean, I know a lot of people love The Rocketeer. A lot of people love Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, picking your favorite Joe Johnston movie, it's almost like choosing your favorite child. There's just too many to choose from. Just impossible. But yeah, I mean, I think this fits the category pretty well, right, Trevor? I mean, he was started as a visual effects guy, right? I mean, I think I hit the nail on the head here. Yeah.
No, man, that's a fantastic first pick, bud.
All
Like
right.
you put me to shame a little bit because you checked a lot of boxes there where it's like, yes, visual effects was Joe Johnston's starting place, and I would certainly call that like an art department type job in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but not only that, you brought in the emotional attachment aspect of it, where you actually like him, like we actually like Joe Johnston because there's a lot
Yeah.
of wonderful artists who make not that great movies when they're in the director's chair, where it's like maybe there's elements of those movies, at least in the case of a lot of my picks, where the visual design is fantastic, but the actual movie, like maybe the acting is just under directed and it's pretty loose or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, or there's just like misallocated funds in the production where it's like clearly there was more attention devoted to certain aspects of this production than others. But in Joe Johnston's case, he's a director. Like he makes generally very high quality movies. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to point to a lot of his stuff and say it's outright bad. And on top of that, he's worked in some pretty stressful situations too, as far as I understand. Like The Wolfman was a historically troubled production. Do you remember all the bullshit surrounding that
A
one?
little bit. I kind of remember, especially when it came out. I kind of remember the talk of it, but I don't remember any specifics right now, really.
It was something along the lines of there were like three different directors attached to that movie at one
Yeah.
time or another, and by the time you get to the end of that movie, the narrative just limps across the finish line. It's a busted production in a lot of ways. It has its charms though, and a lot of them have to do with its aesthetics. I do
Mm-hmm.
like the look of it quite a lot. If memory serves, Rick Baker did the Wolfman makeup effects for that movie, and they're quite good. As is the gore. I really love the gore in that movie. They do not pull punches when it comes to people getting torn apart and eviscerated in that movie. It's kind of shocking how violent that movie is.
What was it? R-rated? I can't remember. I've only seen it when it came out. I can't
Absolutely, there's
remember. Yeah, it
there's
is. Okay.
viscera in that movie, Brad. There's
Yeah.
guts strewn on the ground at certain shots in that movie. But um, Jurassic Park 3 is a fine Jurassic Park movie. Like it is absolutely nowhere near the Lost World or especially first Jurassic Park, but it's a fine adventure movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the animatronics and stuff in that movie from Stan Winston are quite nice. I'm really shocked you haven't seen The Rocketeer though, because in a lot of ways, like it's another Disney movie, but I feel like The Rocketeer is basically what got him the Captain America gig, where it's like
Yeah.
it has that throwback vintage vibe to it, like that kind of like pinup style for like the females in the film, and just the time period and stuff. It just matches up where they're both World War II stories. They both kind of have that kind of like transparently like cartoonish quality to them, where it's like this feels like it's winking at you just a little bit, or it's not a contemporary film in that way. But I would highly recommend The Rocketeer. I really enjoyed that when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's definitely one on my list. I do need to, check it out at some point. I would say, in terms of the Captain America movies, I personally think the first one is my favorite. I know I'm in the minority there. A lot of people love the Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but I saw it twice in theaters, and I don't get it. I don't get it. And Civil War, I didn't really care for as well. But no, I think the first one was, just a fun, yeah, like you said, sort of a throwback. I loved the World War II aspect of it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was too, right? Because it was Nazis, right? Or
yeah,
was it? Yeah.
absolutely. No, it was definitely World War II,
Okay.
Brad. Um,
I second
no,
guessed
World
myself there for
War
a second.
World War I would not fall into fashion. It wouldn't come into fashion for another few years in
Yeah.
Hollywood. Like we were just blitzkrieged with we were just inundated with World War I media a few years later, like in the mid 2010s, around the time of Wonder Woman in 1917.
Yeah.
Even one of the Battlefield games was set in World War I. The Peter Jackson documentary came out about World War I, the colorized footage and stuff. I don't know
Hmm.
what the fuck happened. Like, oh, I think I know what happened. Maybe I'm a dipshit. It's probably the 100-year anniversary of the conflict, if I had to guess. If I had to
Yeah,
guess.
that might be part of it.
Sorry,
Um,
I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they were really thinking about that when they were doing Wonder Woman, but maybe, I don't know.
Maybe,
The Peter
probably
Jackson one,
not.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
If I had to guess Wonder Woman, it was more to create distance between that and Captain America, where
Yeah,
it's like they're
yeah.
they're both period films, but ours is a different World War. You see the rifles are more shit.
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but yeah, Joe Johnston's is that's a fantastic pick, Brad. I'm surprised I didn't think of it. Probably because I think I only have Captain America and the Rocketeer of his
Okay.
movies. Although I do love Jumanji quite a lot. I was
Yeah.
I was raised on the Jumanji for sure. Um,
Mhm.
but in terms of like the ranking of the Captain America movies, I don't know if I would put the first one first, but I do have like a fun story of having seen that. I saw that in the theater when I was waiting to go to the airport. I was
Mm.
visiting a friend, and a friend who happened to have an affinity for Captain America. Uh, I've developed one like in the years since. At the
Yeah.
time, I was kind of ambivalent towards the character, but after that, I started reading the comics, like the back issues and whatnot. And since then, I've really come to enjoy Cap. But yeah, I got to see that movie in the theater with my friend who I was visiting. I don't see him
Nice.
very often,
Yeah.
and it was just in this weird limbo period where I was waiting for a flight, and it was great. Like we just walked into the theater. It was like a very casual, just walk up to the box office and say, "I would like 2 tickets to see Captain America," and it's just like I didn't really see any of the previews for this one, and like I really wasn't even that hyped for it. And I was like, that was a solid movie. I enjoyed that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I
The
think
movie
the
theater wasn't
problem. Oh, go ahead, sir.
the movie theater wasn't at the airport, was it?
No, but it was not that far away, honestly. It was a comfortable distance away. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't a tight issue to get to the airport after that. But I think part of the issue with the other two Captain Americas is just I think of those movies as collections of fantastic scenes, but in terms of like cohesive narratives, they're kind of they're kind of floaty. Like I don't feel like they're very tight in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but they do have some really awesome set pieces. Like they do have lots of really cool moments that I'm really glad that we have. I'm just not sure if the total package of either of those two movies really completely works, especially Civil War. Like Civil War is very very much like corporate housekeeping the movie, where it's like we're
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're setting too much up with it. We're spinning a lot of other plates that don't have everything to do with the story we're trying to tell right now.
Yeah, they're just like MCU movies. I mean,
Kind of, yeah.
basically
We're a
Avengers
soldier
movies,
less,
but
though I would say.
not really.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but the first Avenger, the Captain America first Avenger, that one, I think that's the only MCU movie I haven't seen in theaters. I think.
really.
Yeah, I don't know why that one just came and went. Um, to be honest, I don't even remember really it coming out. Like to think like, oh, I wanted to go see that, and then obviously I wasn't quite as like knew what the MCU was at the time because like it was just sort of getting going. So I was probably like, oh, this is just some stupid superhero movie. I can skip it or whatever. But
It doesn't help that the costume was kind of shit.
yeah,
Like in terms of like marketing that thing, it's like, oh, like
yeah,
really, that's what we went with. And then by the time you get to Winter Soldier, it's like it comes back for the finale of that one. It's like, really? Like you think we're gonna get nostalgia puffs for that? It's like I
that's
think
what
you
we're
just
going with. Yeah, yeah,
it's like after you had that like really sleek and really well designed costume for the opening act, it's like we're downgrading to that, and I'm supposed to like pop for that. It's supposed to be like Rocky wearing Apollo's trunks or some shit. No, I don't have an emotional attachment to Cap's shitty World War II costume. At least
yeah.
the movie version of it.
I feel
Anyway,
like the costume designers in some of these superhero movies, me and them are just on different wavelengths, to be honest. Because
well,
at
I
times,
mean,
like things that are meant to be like cool, I'm just like, it looks gross.
what's really embarrassing is like when the cinematography and the editing is like really trying to push that. That's like you're supposed to, your hair is going to be blown back when the
Hmm.
camera pulls back and you get to see it all. It's like that's it. It doesn't do anything. But we can get off of MCU stuff. We're here to talk about Joe Johnston and other artists. So, but that was a fantastic first pick, though, Brad. So thanks for getting us started on the right track.
It's all downhill from
So
here for me.
probably me too, right out the gate. Honestly, I have a lot of movies that are okay, like okay. And what's funny is I have a lot of good movies that I honestly just don't have as much to say about the people who made them.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna lead with my heart. I'm gonna go with a guy that I like. It's hard for me to defend a lot of these movies as being like true, well-rounded works of art. But hey, you started with a guy that you just like. I like Joe Johnston too, so I'll do the same thing. So I have here in my hand a stack of a DVD, a Region 2 DVD on top of that. Sorry, Brad. If folks at
Wow.
home, if you're not aware, Brad has a stigma towards a DVD. Not a fan of the format. Uh, so I have one DVD and four Blu-rays here. So I'm going to introduce here my DVD of Mirai Ninja, Future Ninja. Mirai means future. This is a Japanese DVD, so it is Region 2. This movie actually did receive a domestic American release on VHS, I believe. And I think it was called like Cyber Ninja or maybe Future Ninja. I've only ever seen it in Japanese without subtitles, so my comprehension of the plot was not amazing. But this film was directed and, more importantly, designed like this character design that we see here on the cover, which I find very compelling and very beautiful, is from Keita Amemiya, or Amemiya Keita, if you want to reverse the surname. He is a Japanese filmmaker, obviously, but he is chiefly like a design artist who got his start in the tokusatsu subgenre. So that's like live action, like sci-fi in Japan. So be it Godzilla films or Sentai or Power Rangers or Kamen Rider or Ultraman, that's tokusatsu. Usually it's live action sci-fi or fantasy involving a lot of special effects. In fact, the word comes from special effects photography. Works where it's like a lot of the ideas and concepts and designs that they're attempting to represent in live action honestly would probably be easier to render in animation. But I think it's very admirable that like in the traditionally very low budget realm of Japanese sci-fi cinema, they attempt to do these things in live action to the best of their ability, and just having a physical prop of this character design, like with an actor inhabiting it, to me is very special. I think it's a very novel, very interesting way to present a story. Anyway, he got his start in the design realm, so he would design a lot of like the Monster of the Weeks that you would see on like Power Ranger type shows and Kamen Rider type shows and whatnot. But he very quickly actually moved into directing episodes of those shows. Um, and ever since then, he's kind of become uh, like a keeper of one entire subcategory of that genre. He has a series called Garo that is. It started when I was in college, and it persists to this day. Apparently, like they're still cranking out new iterations of it. It's entirely his baby. I fully expect it to be just like a one and done, like one season, like a 25 episode show. But it exploded, and in the like late 20 like late 2000s, I think, is when it first came out. And ever since then, it's like grown and grown and grown. It's basically become a pillar akin to like a Kamen Rider or a Ultraman or a Sentai. Like it's a pillar of the tokusatsu subgenre, with its own little ecosystem and stuff. So additionally, Mirai Ninja is like one of the very first movies that he made. It was a Namco production. Namco being the video game company, which is now Bandai Namco.
Mm-hmm.
Huge video game company now. At the time, Namco was like the people who gave you like Pac-Man, and later in the 90s, like Tekken and Ridge Racer and stuff like that. So this was actually a video game tie-in movie. And it has lovely prop design and really nifty optical effects. That's something that is very common across most of his filmography, because a lot of the motion pictures he made, a lot of the feature-length films he made, came out in the late 90s and or late 80s, early 90s, when those sorts of technologies were kind of at their peak. Zeiram is entirely his baby. This is the 30th anniversary edition Blu-ray. I stumbled across this movie playing at a card store that was selling a lot of Japanese bootleg VHSs. This was just on, and it was the finale of the movie, which has some really gnarly like monster effects, like akin to Rob Bottin's work on the John Carpenter's The Thing movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of slimy, gnarly shit was happening on the screen, and I was just like walking through there with my grandma, and we were both just like, "What in the fuck is this?" And of course, like, I ended up seeing it later.
I gotta watch that.
You do.
Yeah.
Zeiram 2 is obviously the sequel to Zeiram. It's a weird, like almost like retread of the first one, but it does have noticeably a higher budget and like slicker production values. Reunites most of the same cast, which is very, very pleasant. I really enjoy the cast of that one. This is actually a bootleg Blu-ray. Got it in the mail like last week, and have been enjoying it quite a lot. I've told you about this before, Brad, that this is a series of short films, like direct-to-video films, Kamen Rider films, that I need to own in some fashion because I love all of them a lot. Not so much this one. This is the one that, Brad, I sent you a clip of, where it's a Kamen Rider doing like a David Cronenberg-esque transformation into the Grasshopper Man.
Yep.
But if we flip her over, we have Kamen Rider Zo on the left hand, and then Kamen Rider J on the other side. Both of those films, not this guy, but both of these films, these 45-minute direct-to-video Kamen Rider movies from the early 90s, were from Keita Amemiya, and I love them. Kamen Rider Zo, in particular, is basically Terminator 2, and it's like a Peter Jackson production in that they do like every trick in the book in terms of effects. Like they even have stop motion in there for one scene, just because, like, just throw it in there. And then Hakkaida. This is based on the Kikaida series of tokusatsu, but it's based on the villain of that show. So this is like an anti-hero type story. I love the cover art to this. Always have. I have an art book that goes with it, actually. This is actually a feature-length film. And I think it's pretty nifty. The acting is butt ugly. Like, it's bad. It's real bad. But the visual design, the costuming in particular, Keita Amemiya has a very specific style, such that I own a couple of his art books just because I like his designs. That's why I watch his stuff. All of these movies that I paraded in front of you for the past 10 minutes or whatever have their liabilities. Like, they're not fantastic. A lot of times the acting isn't great. The narratives are very loose, but they all have a charm to them. A lot of times they have a kind of a subtle, or not subtle, but they do have a sense of humor about themselves, which is very welcome. But it's mostly just the props, the stuff, the things in there that have clearly been manufactured in some artist workshop. They're all really lovingly conceived and very, very, very cohesive, because it's very clearly coming from the same guy. So yeah, he's actually largely the reason I wanted to do this month. It's just because I never had really much of an excuse to talk about his stuff, because the quality of his movies isn't great, and it's a tough sell to ask your buddy in podcasting to like subject himself to crap. but it's like, hey, it's crap that I like looking at,
Yeah.
and a lot of times that's enough for me.
You had to reverse engineer things to fit this guy, and
Exactly,
I respect
exactly.
that. I respect it. Um, well, here's a question for you, and you might not have
Mm,
an answer, and that's okay. You know, this isn't we're not in high school anymore. Okay, we're adults. So, like the guy's early work, where he's just the designing, he's an he's designing the suits or the monsters or whatever he's doing. Can you see a clear like similarity between his actual directed works? So, like, does he have similar monsters, similar suits? Like, is he got a like similar vibe across all his stuff?
a little bit. He's very big on incorporating Japanese mythology into his design work. Um, However, he deals largely with sci-fi.
Hmm.
So a lot of times he'll do like futuristic, fantastical designs, but they have an ancient quality associated with them. Like there's a particular like ornate quality to them and a flourish that very much feels like antiquated Japanese design work. In terms of like overarching themes in his work, it's kind of hard to pin down because a lot of them are dealing with or playing with other people's toys. Like he is playing in currently existing franchises. Um, but he does seem to like to tell things in like a fairy tale like fashion. Where like again, a lot of his stuff is sci-fi, but he does weave like a fanciful kind of like fantastical quality into a lot of his stories. In fact, some of his art books are actually assembled as storybooks, like as like a fairy tale, like a children's book almost.
Yeah.
And he's had that motif play out through. That was definitely in Garo. And it's definitely in Common Rider. I think Hokkaido definitely leans into that. He also seems to have a thing for anti-heroes to some extent, like like people who are gruff or rough around the edges who you need from time to time to get things done. Because like Hokkaido, he's like explicitly a bad character, but he's rendered as a like a black knight in that movie, where it's like the villain characters in that movie are all very deliberately clad in white uniforms, and there's a like a very like ethereal like pure quality to their designs. And Hokkaido's like this rough, like kind of blunt edged character, all clad in black, but he's the hero.
Hmm.
Kind of similar thing with Garo also, where it's like the main character is kind of a gruff asshole, but he's the person that everybody needs to run to when evil needs to be quelled or whatever. But yeah, it's hard to find like an overarching theme to his work, but it seems largely he works from the design outward. It's
Yeah.
like very
Yeah.
much that's the starting point. It's
Yeah.
like,
No,
does it
that
look
makes
cool?
sense.
Do I like drawing it? Let's make a movie about it.
Yep. Yep. And is he? I'm trying to think because I know you sent me that clip. Is this stuff kind of is he modern or is he still working or I can't
He's
remember.
still working. He's
Yeah.
still
Okay.
working, but he got his start in the '80s, I believe. Was when he was doing design work, and then in the late '80s was, I believe, when he started directing, and he was doing Sentai, so Power Rangers episodes of that show. And he was doing like monster designs and character design work without directing on Kamen Rider and Sentai at the time. And then around the time of Zeiram was kind of when he started doing like original productions. Zeiram actually got like an animation spin-off and a video game at one point. But yeah, that Garo show that I don't have a visual aid to go with is still running to this day, as far as I understand. If either that or it's on hiatus or something as of like a few years ago. So he's still floating around out there.
Well, good for him. I mean, keep working, keep pumping them out, keep designing, and
Yeah,
yeah, very cool. Yeah, I know that clip you sent me. I really did like that. Um, the Common Rider by way of Cronenberg. So
yeah,
pretty solid,
yeah. It's
pretty
cool
good.
stuff. It's
Yeah.
cool. I mean, I know you like your Cronenberg, so I was like, you should
Hmm.
have this, Brad.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd like
well,
to. I'd
that's
like to
enough.
check out some of his stuff out if it's anywhere even in the vein of that.
Yeah, I'd like to have you check out some of his stuff. Like the Kamen Rider movies are a pretty easy sell because they're about 45 minutes each, and they're just like bang, 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 just like special effects and designs, just one after the other. so they're very digestible, and they move too fast for you to get bored, honestly. So that'd actually be kind of a fun place to start.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'd love to have you watch one of his things at some point. But that's enough about that fella. So Brad, what is your next director slash artist that you'd like to spotlight?
Well, I'll go. How about I go with this one? This one, I think it still fits. Maybe the brush. Maybe we're, if we're going specifically brush, maybe not. I'm sure, we can just assume he's, used a brush for storyboards or whatever. But specifically, this is a director who began, I don't know if this is what he first did when he was getting into the film industry, but began as a cinematographer.
Oh,
And so much so that a lot of his stuff that he actually directed himself, he shot as well. He, was a cinematographer on his actual directorial works. I don't know if that's across the board or on all of them. I was doing a little research here and there that a few of his films there was like credited cinematographer and then he was uncredited. So I don't know what the story is there. But I'm speaking of the late great Italian horror filmmaker Mario Bava, who I am a pretty big fan of. I don't know if I'd say I'm a fanatic in terms of Italian horror filmmakers. I think I'd put Argento as my number one, but I think I'd put maybe Bava as my number two. I think I'd put him above Fulci. And I think these are the only three I have of his. Kino's put out a lot of his stuff, and I have A Bay of Blood, Black Sunday, and Black Sabbath. So Bay of Blood is later into his career. Actually, I do own one other one. I have an Arrow release of Shock, which is his final film, but I haven't gotten around to watching it, so I didn't pull it off because I don't have anything to say about it. But A Bay of Blood came out in the 70s. I want to say it was like 71 or something like that, and it is kind of like a really like proto slasher. Like it's a very influential slasher, specifically like the Friday the 13th franchise feels like it's borrowed a lot from this. And there's even a kill. I don't know if you know the kill, Trevor. I think you do. I think we talked about it, right? With the pole, the couple and the pole and the, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Sorry,
Okay.
bud.
No, well, there's one of the Friday the 13th movies has a couple who is having a good time in bed and they get stabbed with like a spear or a pole or something. And that is kill lifted directly from this movie. Like 100%, like they just, whether it's a nice little tip of that cap or they just straight up stole it, I don't know. But it doesn't quite have the same like simplicity of the story as like the slashers of the 80s. Like it's actually like there's land dispute over like a lake, and so like people are getting killed off for like the land. So it's a little more, I guess, maybe unnecessarily complicated than some of the slashers it inspired, but it's very good. It's very bloody and quite a bit of nudity as well, especially for the time. Like it feels like it was very, pushing boundaries. Um Black Sunday is definitely, you can feel its influence a lot, and Black Sabbath, I guess I would say. I feel like the biggest person that this probably influenced is Tim Burton himself.
Mm.
I like the visuals in this movie specifically, and Black Sabbath to a certain extent, very much feel like were an influence on Tim Burton. Obviously, this was inspired as well by like the German expressionism films, the silent films. But I feel like Tim Burton obviously was inspired by those, but I think I'm pretty sure he's said he's a Mario Bava fan because if you watch this, like some of the visuals, it's hard to like not think of Tim Burton. But it's kind of I think it's about some witch or I don't really remember the plot of this one all that much, but visually it's great. That's the main thing with Mario Bava movies is the visuals are amazing, even if the plots are not, and makes sense because he started as a cinematographer. And then Black Sabbath is a anthology horror film, um, and like a lot of anthology horror films, some of the shorts are better than others. there's one involving a, like, old woman who dies, and I think it's, like I don't remember the plot, but it's, like, somebody has to go to the house where this old I can't remember, but anyway, it's, like, there's this visual of this old maybe it's even an old man, I can't even remember, but I think it's an old woman, and I think she's a corpse, and her like, the look and design of that corpse is actually very creepy, like, especially, like, thinking, like, this is from, like, 1963, like, thinking of that, like, it's unsettling. It's a great design of a dead body, like, it's, like, a little goofy, but it's very off-putting, and I love that segment, I think it's great. And I will say there are a few different versions of this movie because, there's, like, a US version and an international version. Um, I think I've only seen the US version because that's what I have here. I do believe I have heard everyone say that the international cut is better or superior. Maybe I've seen both. I can't remember now, but this is the um whatever I think it's the US cut or something. So not the ideal version from what I understand. And Kino actually put out um both versions as separate releases. I don't know why I bought this one. I probably just didn't know and just was like, oh, it's just two of the same fucking movie. I'll pick this one. Probably just not even thinking. But anyway, I love this movie, and I really love pretty much all the Mario Bava movies that I've seen. Um, I'm a pretty big fan. Blood and Black Lace is obviously a great one and very influential. Giallo on that subgenre. Like the guy, he might not be like a household name, but he certainly left his mark, at least on the horror genre. And gone too soon. Gone too soon. I mean, I think he was probably old when he died, so probably but you know what I mean. R.I.P.
No, Mario Bava comes up in a lot of our conversations. In case anyone out there isn't familiar with some of Brad's taste in movies, but thanks for bringing that up. I didn't actually know that he was a cinematographer coming up, but I guess that would
Hmm.
explain his visual stylings being like one of his strengths. I guess I'll ask you the same question you asked me about Keita Amemiya. Is there any particular like overarching quality in terms of like narrative interest or like theming across his movies, or is it just kind of like a mood and a tone and a look kind of thing that's common across his movies?
I would say it's more the mood and the tone. Obviously, they're all
Gotcha.
not everything he's done, but most of what he's done is in the horror genre. But it's very much like a sort of, almost like you said with the one you talked about, like almost like fairy tale esque. Like the visuals are kind of like otherworldly. Like again, like those German silent films,
Yeah.
and a lot of interesting like I think Black Sunday is in black and white, but like Blood and Black Lace, Black Sabbath, like those ones have very uh interesting use of color, like very colorful as well. And yeah, I think he certainly is a visual filmmaker because even like me, I was trying to remember like what are these movies even about, and I can't even really remember, but there are visuals that I stand out. Like I can specifically remember that corpse, and I can remember the look of the masked killer in Blood and Black Lace. I couldn't tell you anything about who the killer ends up being or what have I, but I remember the look of the killer and the visuals and the opening credits of the visuals of the opening credits. So that's kind of the stuff that stands out. And yeah, like it's almost like the plot and the story is really just there for him to just, you know, create some great, amazing visuals. So it makes sense with him being starting as a cinematographer and continuing to work as a cinematographer as well, which is kind of interesting because that you do get that sometimes. Like Paul Thomas Anderson has been doing that lately, shooting his own films.
Zack
Um,
Snyder as of late
yeah, yeah, Zack Snyder. So,
with
obviously,
his dead pixels.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes sense because obviously, as a director, you need to have an eye for like it's like what you want to put on screen, and it's more. I guess it's like, do you have the capability to run everything else and shoot your movie? or is it better to have somebody by your side that you trust and they can take your vision and put it on screen? So obviously, like with somebody like, Paul Thomas Anderson, it's like the guy, I mean, he knows what he's doing. I don't think he's having any struggles where he can be like, yeah, I can shoot my own movie too. I know how to make a movie. I can know how to make a pretty good movie. And Mario Bava, he made a lot of movies, so I mean,
No,
he's
yeah,
certainly well versed in filmmaking. So it makes sense why he would be able to, and the fact that like the plot and like like all that stuff, it doesn't really matter. So he's probably like, I don't give a shit about the script and all. I don't care about that. I just want my movies to pop. So I guess it does make sense why he would shoot his own work as well.
yeah. I mean, that has to be quite the undertaking. I
Yeah.
mean, but then again, like speaking from my own life experience, there are plenty of instances where it is very hard to let go and let other people like defer responsibility to others. I know my girlfriend, is kind of struggling with that at work right now. Um, but in most cases, like on something as large as a film production, I feel like having a person that you trust, like being able to have that conversation with a person in terms of the goal, in terms of the intent behind putting the thing together from a visual standpoint. I feel like that would be very valuable. But hey, like you said, Paul Thomas Anderson knows how to make fucking film, so
Hmm.
it's not something I think everybody could do, but that I guess there's a special few out there that really can wear both of those hats at the same time.
Yeah. I'm just looking a little bit on Mario Bava's Wikipedia. Apparently, he did do a lot of like special effects work as
Oh,
well.
cool.
There's a lot of things that say he was credited as his special effects, along with having shot the film. Like he was a cinematographer, but it also says special effects next to it. So yeah, he put in a lot of work before he made, and I guess Black Sunday was, according to this, his first um feature. And I don't know if he shot that one himself or not, but um anyway, yeah, he's one of my favorites. And when I said gone too soon, actually, I looked up. I guess I was right. He was only 65. And he looked a lot older than that, so he might have lived a rough life. I mean, that's working as your own cinematographer. It might take some years off your life because he looked a lot older than 65 in some of the pictures I've seen of him. So I mean, God bless him, but I mean, buddy, we wish he would have stayed around for a little bit longer, but he was committed to the work.
Okay, well, I got a couple of questions for you. One, entry point to Mario Bava. Two, favorite Mario Bava. Go.
That's some tough questions. I really like Black Sabbath, even though I don't think it's like perfect. Um, I would probably say that might be my favorite. Although I did watch a movie called Kill Baby Kill, and
Hmm,
I've only seen that one once, and it was on Shutter, and I really like that one a lot. So I maybe put it between those two. I think Black Sunday is a real good entry point. Um, I mean, it's like, it's maybe not for everybody. Like for just your average Joe, I would 100% say either Blood and Black Lace or A Bay of Blood, because those ones
hmm.
they follow a very traditional sort of path, like something familiar, slasher films, giallo. But if you're looking for his unique eye and visuals, I would probably say Black Sunday would be a good starting point, or Black Sabbath, because they're they came out close to each other. It does remind me, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but a lot of people have pointed out how his movie Planet of the Vampires was a big influence on the Alien franchise, and specifically Prometheus. There's a lot of like
Really?
visual similarities between Planet of the Vampires and Prometheus. Even like the suits are quite similar. And I don't know if there's been any Ridley Scott going on record about Planet of the Vampires, but I feel like that might be one you'd be interested in.
That name is very familiar. Like, is like John Carradine in that one or something? Like, I could be totally wrong on that, but I've definitely
Mm,
heard the title of that one before.
no, I don't think he
Okay.
is. Barry Sullivan is the first person listed here.
Barry, good old Barry Sullivan.
Yeah.
Household name, Barry Sullivan.
obviously.
Okay, well, I have to put that on my to-do list because I'd be very curious to see the elements that you picked up on in there.
Yeah, I think even like plot wise, like there's like a thing of like a distress beacon, and they go down to a planet, and I like it's you watch it and you think, oh, this Ridley guy, I don't know, has he ever gone on record? Like if he's gone on record and said, I love Planet of the Vampires, then he's good, but he might be hoping this goes under the radar. He might be hoping nobody calls him
No,
out on this.
I mean, I'm not surprised in the slightest. Influences come from everywhere, and a lot of times, like directors remember things from when they were very young, and they
Hmm.
tap into those things, usually intentionally. Um, and in the case of the first Alien movie, like it's long been said that it bears a very close resemblance to a B movie from the 50s. It's like the Terror from Beyond Space or something, or It Came from Outer Space. One of those It titles.
Yeah.
I think it was the former rather than the latter, but it's long been said that the structure of it is alarmingly similar to that, and
Hmm.
that's probably very intentional. I mean, was it Ed O'Bannon or David O'Bannon? I forget the first name of him, but Mr. O'Bannon, the fellow
Yeah.
who wrote the film, more than likely saw that movie when he was young and
Hmm.
transposed it onto a film script. It's
Yeah.
the thing we all do.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised at all. But that's really
Yeah.
interesting, though.
I think you personally, if I was going to recommend one to you, I think it would be Planet of the Vampires. I think
Okay.
you'd like it.
No, I'd love to check it out because I haven't seen a Mario Bava film before.
Hmm.
I guess we got recommends going back and forth here.
Yeah. Put it on the
Okay.
list.
Yeah, it's on the list. Okay. I guess the ball is back to me. And I have a really clean segue that I don't really want to make, but I could make it right now and it would be like a really clean transition. Although the window is just passed, so I'm going to forego that and skip onto something completely unrelated. We'll come back to that during the speed round. So I have in my hands a bunch of anime, which I know is going to freak out Brad because he is not a fan of the genre, not a fan of the medium, that is, Japanese animation, that is. But what's really interesting is that the world of animation is kind of a cheat code when it comes to making picks for this particular discussion, because if you put some nuance in there, most animation directors begin as animators or designers in their own right, and that it's not until many years down the line that they're given the responsibility, the privilege of serving as the chief director of a production. Usually you have to climb the ranks, especially in Japanese animation, where a lot of directors, as far as I know, still do key animation on films that they direct to this day, which I think is very admirable. I think that's how it should be, honestly. It's like if you're doing a thing that's entirely fabricated from the human hand in terms of like ink and pen, like hand drawn animation, you may as well put your own hand on the page every once in a while. Like you don't have to do it for every frame, but maybe just the key frames. Maybe literally serve as the guiding hand for the visual design of the film. Anyway, this fella doesn't make, from a narrative standpoint, a lot of these movies are kind of not great. They're very loose, all of them. But from an animation standpoint, from a design standpoint, oh, they're so much fun to look at. Just brilliant animation and design work. So I have 4 discs here, and I believe in order. Well, it's not going to be the right order, but it'll be in order. So, so I'm sorry. I have here a DVD of Wicked City, and this is directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who began as just an animator, like not an animation director, just drawing frames, not even keyframes. Just he was just working at an animation house, and through hard work and dedication and talent, he was promoted to full ass director status. And Wicked City, I think, was his one of his very earliest. It's based on a novel, I believe. Also, there's a live action version of it that I think was produced in Hong Kong. It's a Chinese production. I also have Ninja Scroll, which has come up in conversation with Brad many a time. I've told you about this one before, Brad. Ninja
Hmm.
Scroll just fucking rocks. like Ninja Scroll, when you're 13 and you're into blood and gore and violence and stuff, and you're Japanese and you're like learning about your own cultural heritage, this is the shit. My mother would have approved. My mom's like, she's like, Ninja Scroll, there's your cultural education, son. That'll get you up to speed on what your people are about.
Yeah.
I also have Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which is the sequel to Vampire Hunter D. Funny enough, all of these movies that I'm holding up in front of the screen, I believe Kawajiri himself did the design work, like the character designs for the film. He has a very distinctive silhouette to his characters. You'll notice D here has a very angular nose, very pointed, very long nose.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of his characters are very, like his base characters are very long and lithe. But like a lot of Japanese animation, like body sizes just change very radically to convey character. Like if there's a fat character, they'll be extremely fat. If there's a muscular character, he'll be a brick shit house that's 8 feet tall and 7 feet wide or something. But his base, his median for like character designs is very long and lithe, very long, like aquiline noses. Very, very graceful, very elegant silhouettes for the most part. But what's fascinating about this one is that it is a sequel, and the original design work I think comes from novels and comics, and eventually it was made into animation. Yoshitaka Amano did the original design work for these characters, and Amano's style is radically different from Kawajiri. But the change is welcome. The animation in this film is why I own it. I don't give a shit about Vampire Hunter D, honestly. That first movie is kind of but holy shit, the animation quality in Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust and just the creativity in the characters and their capabilities and stuff it's gorgeous. It's from like 2002, I think. And it's from that beautiful sweet spot where it's like we're using digital techniques, we're using technology to enhance our hand-drawn animation, but the important thing is we're still doing hand-drawn. We're doing paint and cell animation, and it still has that organic vitality to it. That, for me, we'll talk about this when I'm done with my spiel here, Brad. But like, I'm an animation fan, but I'm very specifically like hand-drawn, like cell animation is kind of very specifically my lane. Like CGI, like computer-generated animation. It's beautiful, it's fascinating, but there's a lack of tangibility to it, where there's a lack of ability for me to like conceive of the logistics of how it was done that like creates a sense of detachment. Whereas that, it's like I know somebody drew every frame of that, and just by the fluidity of the movement of it, it's like I know how many fucking frames they had to draw of that and how precise they had to be to marry each and every one of those individual frames to one another in order to create that image. You can see the work, I guess, is what you're saying, and readily identify how it was conceived. And then I have a piece of shit movie that has zero redeeming qualities. Highlander: The Search for Vengeance, which is a bizarre, truly bizarre, direct to DVD animation from Studio Madhouse, which, by the way, is one of the foremost. It's like one of the largest animation houses in Japan. He's a co-founder of it, so his influence is felt far and wide. I think the only reason this was made is because this was around the time like Dragon Ball Z was really popular on American television, and this was also around the time that Madhouse was being contracted to do Batman and Marvel animations direct to DVD. Also, this was the American marketing blitz where they're like, those kids are into the animes, we should make anime of our own, but let's like base it around American properties and tell bullshit stories that no one wants to hear. Let's make the Punisher fight the Black Widow in a Japanese animated story that we didn't bother to write. Oh yeah, and we're not going to pay the studio enough to like animate it well, so it exists now. Hopefully, some kids bought it. Trevor did, because he's a dipshit.
They got you. They got you good.
They got me. Got him. Anyway, I think that's all the stuff of his I have. I think Cyber City, Oedo. I think Cyber City I might have somewhere over there, but it's on DVD and it might be packed away somewhere. But yeah, he's highly influential Japanese animation director, has done a lot of American produced animations. Like he worked on both the Animatrix, that Highlander, and the Batman Gotham Knight anthology animation
Okay.
series as well. So he's one of the go-to guys for that. A lot of that might have to do with the fact that he did a segment for Neo Tokyo, which is a animation anthology that has a extremely pricey DVD. By the way, it's out of print. It's like easily over $100 disc because of that. Has yet to be transferred to HD as far as I know, but he did a segment for that called The Running Man, which is a beautiful piece of short sci-fi animation that I believe aired on Liquid Television, so like MTV style programming. So it could be that like because of the success that his work had on American television at some point, like a lot of producers or something had him planted in their mind as like, oh, this guy works for the kids. The kids like this guy. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough out of me.
That the Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah.
Now, I have you brought that up with me before or not? Because like I know that the design of that character, like I have seen that. That is familiar. I don't. Was this like a big enough thing in the States that I would know it when it was out, or would I only know it because you've brought it up before? I'm trying to think where I would know that from.
Well, I mean, you're a little young for it. I am too, honestly, but I have an older brother who was into this kind of stuff to, get this, like funnel this stuff to me when I was a little younger than it was
Yeah.
intended. But the first Vampire Hunter D, the original, came out sometime in the 80s. Uh, probably, honestly, probably like before I was born.
Yeah.
Like if I had to guess, like 86 maybe. I was born in 87. Um, and it did actually make its way to video rental stores. Like the VHS was readily available. I know for a fact we had it at our local Blockbuster. So it could be that you saw the cover art or something at your local video store. And also, there was like a PS1 game at one point as well. And it's also just it's a really snazzy design, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, yeah, just looking at the cover of that DVD you held up, it's like, that looks cool. Like, I'm
It
not
does.
even that big into anime, but it's like, that looks cool. Like, I kind of dig that.
Yeah, no, it's just a very good design. In fact, I think that's largely where the affinity for the character comes from because I couldn't tell you shit about the character other than he has a
Yeah.
talking hand. Talking hand's
Yeah.
kind of charming, but just the big hat and the sword and just the cape and the long hair, the silhouette, it just works, man.
Yeah. Plus for me, there's like, I'm not that big into the medium to begin with, but like, whenever there's like a little bit of like a horror angle to it, it does pique my interest a little more. That's just like can't deny it. It just I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, one of these days, like we gotta do like a 101 course for you or something. Like
mhm.
we gotta get your boy Charlie. We gotta fix his action blindness. Um,
Yeah.
and we gotta get you and Santino to watch some. Folks at home, if you're not aware, Brad has a co-host on his show, Santino, very regularly for like comic book stuff. Who took on the Herculean task of digesting all of One Piece in a single calendar year. That would be like 1,300 episodes or something plus movies.
Mhm.
I
And he did
still
it.
to this day I shout One Piece 1 year every time I think of One Piece.
Yeah.
By the way, there was a One Piece card game gathering at Wajimaya in Seattle the other day that I accidentally walked into. I was just there to buy
Sure.
food, man. I'm
Accident.
serious.
Yeah.
I was just there to buy food, and all these fucking weebs are just crowding the place. It doesn't help that they put new gashapon machines, like toy vending machines, at the entrance of the building. So I'm just trying to get through the door, and I'm like, there are so many sweaty people here gathered at this door that are putting so many coins in these machines. I can't even, I'm just trying to get some sweet potatoes, god damn it. Watching these old biddies, these old grandmas trying to maneuver around this stuff. I was so embarrassed for them.
Hey, I mean, whatever you were there for, man. No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good.
And anyway, we need to get you and Santino to watch some old anime, like this
Yeah.
the shit that I was raised on, because it is a little different as far as I can tell. Like it's a little different. And also it has that hand animated charm. It's like
Yeah.
they didn't have computer coloring techniques and stuff. I remember when I was in high school and Gundam, like the model kits that you see there in the background, those are all Gundam model kits, by the way. This camera angle is not flattering for me. I apologize. It's like normally these things are tucked out of frame. Can't fix it right now. I'm a sucker for most things Gundam, but in high school, the new show that they started airing, uh, introduced computer coloring techniques, and like me and my friend who also was a very big fan of the franchise, both he and I just like recoiled in disgust at the sight of it. We're just like, what the fuck is this? This looks
Mm-hmm.
terrible. I hate looking at this. Like it's disgusting. It it's an embarrassment. And that was because it was the early 2000s and they were just starting to adopt those techniques because I'm sure it
Yeah.
was way cheaper. But it was just the sea change that just like turned me off from an entire medium for. I haven't recovered, Brad. I'm not back.
Really
I
shook you to
don't
your
think I'll ever
core.
be back.
Yeah. Can I tell you about just go off tangent a little bit here?
Please,
There
please.
was you want to know about the only anime that I ever got into? I ever really got into, and I don't even know what it is. Maybe you know, maybe it's super famous. I don't know. I got into one
Okay.
episode of a show. Just one episode. Technically two. It was a two-part episode. It was a two-parter.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, I was, me and my cousins, we would, hang out when we were younger, like 7, 8 years or whatever, and, we'd have sleepovers and stay up late and put on Adult Swim, hoping to
Yeah.
watch Aqua Teen Hunger Force or something like that, or
Yeah.
Family Guy or whatever. There's this anime on, at least in my mind, it's anime. I'm assuming it was. Maybe I'm even wrong on that. I don't know. But it was like a murder mystery show, and there was an episode that was like a full-on slasher horror thing where it's like the main cast was like in this cabin in the woods, and there was like a killer in a really creepy mask that killed somebody, and it was like they didn't know who it was, and it was like a murder they were trying to get to the bottom of it, but it was like actually like really creepy and unsettling, and we like really got into it. We're like, what the heck is this? And I remember that it was a two-parter, and it was so they didn't reveal who the killer was, and so I was like, "Oh, I gotta watch Wednesday." So I somehow TV Guide magazine, or I don't know how I figured it out, but I figured out when the next part would air, and I actually taped it. I taped it on VHS because
Oh,
it was past my bedtime,
wow.
um, and I watched the second part on my own. I think my cousins maybe they weren't as into it as I was. But then I saw the preview for the next. I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! This is my new favorite show." I saw the preview for the next episode, and it was way less horror centric. It was more like anime version of Columbo, and I'm like, okay,
Oh.
maybe this is a one and done thing for me, and that's all I ever watched. But I tell you, I was into that, and I can still remember the shot of the killer running by the window. I think he had the body with him, and he just, and it was like, whoa. So I have no idea what that is, but it was really good.
Okay. I mean, I'll try to do some digging because I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Most of the Japanese animation that I have attachment to is from like mid 2000s backward. Like the
Hmm.
80s was kind of the sweet spot for me. I've seen older Japanese animated works like from prior to the 80s that definitely has an interesting look and feel to it. But yeah, like 80s to the early 2000s was kind of my sweet spot. But yeah, I'll have to look into that because I mean it's a medium. It's not a monolithic thing. It's just Japanese animation. It covers every genre conceivable. So there's tons of horror content out there.
Hmm.
In fact, I remember a lot of people were really upset because I think they put out on Netflix Junji Ito. They were going to adapt his manga, his horror manga, to animation. And if memory serves, the reception to it was not good, which is a shame because have you read any of his stuff? I know for a fact you've probably seen it, but have you ever actually sat down to like read one of his stories?
What was the guy's name again?
Junji Ito.
It's I know you've told me or you said it. The name's familiar.
He like Spiral is one of his most famous stories.
Oh, okay.
Uzumaki, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think no, I
Gyo
haven't
is
read
also
anything,
one.
no.
Tomie. He's a wonderful horror writer, and his illustrations add a considerable amount to the impact of his style. Um, and yeah, it was a big turd. Like the animated version of it just didn't measure up to the manga, to the comic version.
Mhm.
Although I think Spiral Uzumaki at one point I heard they were readapting it, like they were adapting it to animation because it was previously done in live action in the very early 2000s during the J horror boom that Brad is very familiar with. You've watched probably a lot more of those movies than I have, honestly. Um,
Yeah,
I
I've
think they're
a bad
actually
amount. Yeah, probably.
no. You've seen a lot. I've
Well,
seen a handful. I know most by reputation, honestly.
I've probably seen more of the Americanized remakes that came out than the actual originals, but
That's more than me. I've seen a couple.
yeah.
But yeah, I seem to remember Spiral Uzumaki was being adapted. Like I saw a couple of clips of the animation, and it looked very promising.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that ever came out or if it's still in production, but I would totally check that out. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's tons of horror Japanese animation out there. You just have to dig for it.
Real quick, it might be I have it's gonna take me a while to figure it out. It might be an anime called Case Closed.
Oh, did it have a little boy with big glasses?
I think the main character was a little boy. I the big glasses aren't registering with me. I see the picture of him right here, but,
Okay,
I'm
because
guessing that's what it is?
I think that's the American title for Detective Conan, which is
Yes.
a
Yep.
incredibly long running animation series that I am not familiar with, but it's super prolific. Like it's been around forever, and when something's been around that long, you better believe they'll do a musical, a horror episode, tons of holiday specials. I wouldn't be surprised if that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna take me
And
a
it was
while.
probably an aberration within the show, though, where it was just like
Yeah,
that two parter was
I
the
think
extent of
so.
that.
Yeah.
Oh well, you get to live on with the memories, though.
I just gotta watch them all now until I find that episode.
I'm telling you,
Start
it's
from the
very
top.
prolific, Brad. In the world
Yeah.
of Japanese animation, that's not wise. We're talking like One Piece numbers here. Careful.
Case closed 1 year? Case closed 1 year?
Case close 1 year. One Piece 1 year is special to me. I
Yeah.
embarrass my girlfriend with that so often because people cosplay from at least in Seattle. I can't speak for where you're at, but in Seattle, cosplayers are very frequent and you see like something from One Piece, and you just get One Piece 1 year, and they like look around like, what the fuck was that?
What does that mean? Yeah. Is that a
Nobody
threat?
knows, and that's part of the fun. It's
Yeah.
only me.
That's
It's
good.
only
That's
me.
good. I like that.
All right, Brett, how we doing on time? Because if you want to head right into the speed round now, I'm fine with that.
I think I can go one more. I mean, the next one my next one, I don't know if I'll have a ton to say, so I think I can at
Okay.
least go one more if you want. We can do
Oh
one more
yeah,
back
by
and
all
forth.
means,
Yeah.
give us a never pick, Brad. What's your next pick?
So, this one here, not the most inspired take, but it is somebody who started in visual effects once again. This is more modern day. And I've got one other movie of his. This is the one of his that I love, where he maybe will get a free pass. Well, not even no, I was gonna say free pass for life, but his last movie I didn't even really like. So it just to the point where it's like I'm always gonna be interested, but he doesn't get a free pass. But anyway, I'm talking about let me get the name right. It's Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards and the
Oh, you
2014
motherfucker!
Godzilla.
Took my pick.
There we go. All right, we got one. We're on the same page on this one. Yes. Um, yeah, I googled. I don't know what I googled, but I found some Reddit thread of people talking about visual effects artists who got into film, and he was one of the ones listed there. And I was like, that's right. Yeah, I do remember that. And his first movie, Monsters, I remember small indie movie, but of course it was a sci-fi movie with some notable visual effects in it as well. And I did like Monsters actually. It wasn't amazing, but I did
Mhm.
like it. I think Godzilla is my favorite film of his without question. I've only seen Rogue One once, so I do need to give that one another spin. But I love the 2014 Godzilla. I think it rocks. And I think it's got so many, like, I don't want to say awe-inspiring, but, like, for lack of a better word, awe-inspiring set piece moments, where it's just like there's a really epic sense of scale that you get it in some Spielberg blockbusters, you get it in Jurassic Park, and you get it in those rare blockbusters that really take advantage of the big screen and really like deliver set pieces that just like stand out. And I think this Godzilla absolutely has it. I mean, I don't dislike where the MonsterVerse has gone. I think the films are, most of them are fun for the most part, but I certainly think they've gotten away from being at the level of this, and it's kind of cool. It does follow the track record of, like, the original Japanese Godzilla films, where the first one is very serious. In the case of this film specifically, some people would say overly serious. I know that was a criticism of it, and the lack of Godzilla for the first half of the film. I had no issues with. I remember I remember watching this movie in theaters and being blown away coming out of it, and it being like, I go online and it's like, people are poo pooing on this thing. They're poo pooing on my party. I couldn't believe it. And I think even like criticizing the human characters as not being interesting. I mean, I'm not going to disagree, but I think thematically it completely fits within the film's narrative of the idea of nature, course correcting, and humans having no say against the power of nature, how it can, completely just, wipe us out or course correct us into a different path. And I think that works whether intentional or not. I think it works 100% well. Like, I love that. And I love that they killed Bryan Cranston off. I love that. When they did that, I was like, I think this guy's on top of the world, and everybody came here thinking they were going to get a Heisenberg versus Godzilla movie. Get out of here. No way. I loved that. So yeah, I am a big fan of this movie. Um, I mean, I'm not that well versed in the Godzilla films, but certainly this is one of my favorites of the entire, looking at, certainly of the American ones without question, but I would say it's even up there as maybe second only to the 100% original from the 50s. But I love this movie, and I think the visuals are great. And, this Gareth Edwards guy, was not a big fan of the creator, I have to be honest. I'm curious to see what he can do with, I think he's doing the Jurassic World or Park or whatever they're calling it. He's doing the next one of that. Um, I mean, I'm not all that excited about it, but I do think like he could be good for it. Like, I do think he has that, he has those sensibilities. So, I mean, I'm hopeful, I guess. But hey, we'll always have this one. I'm a huge fan of this movie. It rocks.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got a chance to talk about this guy, Gareth Edwards, because yeah, I'm in the camp that I like it too, and I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan. Like, I've been watching Godzilla since before I could talk, and he's still one of my favorite icons in cinema. I still love the guy, and yeah, I am in the camp that I think it's a very good movie. Um, I was kind of flabbergasted by some of the reactions I saw to it, because I think I underestimated the power of Bryan Cranston. It's because I went to that movie to see Godzilla. Like,
Yeah.
I went me in 2014. I went to the theater because I was like, oh, it's a Godzilla movie. I don't care who's in it. It's totally doesn't matter at all.
Hmm.
Like, I'm just here to see the story that they tell and see the fact that Godzilla's in a new movie in 2014, an anniversary year for the character, by the way. Kind of a big deal. Um, but so many people, even people in my social circle, were like, they checked out the moment he was gone. And I kind of get it, because like my girlfriend, their girlfriend, for instance, characters are the, like, kind of the lifeblood of her connection to the narrative of a story. She needs to like her people. She needs to be compelled to follow people through a story. In my case, it's like I don't need that very much. Like, if what we're talking about, if the situation that we're in, if the visual elements, if all of these things are strong enough, I can treat a movie like just an audiovisual experience without so much like emphasis on dialogue or character growth or anything like that. It doesn't matter to me, but it does matter to a lot of people. And I think being deprived of an anchor in the form of Bryan Cranston, who is, a very affable performer, who was, on top of the fucking world at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that really hurt people's engagement with the remainder of the film, of which there's quite a lot, because it does happen pretty early. Spoiler alert. But yeah, to me, the themes that you were talking about of nature being so much more grand than humanity, I think is very cleanly presented in that film, and I think it's very intentional that the human characters are trivialized throughout it. Where
Mm-hmm.
it's like a lot of them are just kind of like character silhouettes, where it's like nurse lady, soldier man, scientist guy, which, as is the case with most Godzilla movies. I think it's intentional in that it's a reference to what came before, but it's also representative of just how fucking useless all the human characters are to what's happening. Because if you pull the lens all the way back, what does Aaron Taylor Johnson achieve in that film? Like, literally, the only thing he does in that movie is stops a little boy from dying on a train, basically. Like, he saves a boy. The
Mm-hmm.
rest, everything else he strives to do in that movie, if he wasn't there, the same outcome would have occurred. And even when he's there, the same outcome would have occurred. Like, even the nuclear bomb detonation, the bomb still goes off. He doesn't even stop the bomb. Like, that's the point of the story, is that
Mm-hmm.
it's Godzilla's story. We're just not focused on him. And even the visual language of the movie kind of points to that so much of the way he's framed in that movie, the human eye, the human perspective can't even encompass the entirety of his body if he's any distance close to you.
Yep.
It's just like he's operating on a scale that's beyond that of people. So it's like if you just trace the path of him throughout the story, it's just like, oh yeah, he's honestly, he's probably not even aware of the human characters. Like the whole thing when they're following him in the battleship or in the aircraft carrier. I don't think he even knows they're there. Like he's just doing his thing.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
let them fight. Let them fight. Just
Love
let
that
them
moment. I
fight.
mean, this
Let them
movie is
fight.
just this movie. This
Why
movie's
isn't that a drop
aces.
on your board, by the way? Let them
That should
fight.
be. That should be.
You
Too
need two
obvious,
Ken
maybe. I
Watanabe
guess.
drops. You need let them fight, and you also need perfect. They're all perfect. From the last samurai. You need
Yeah.
both of
Yeah.
those.
I'll get him.
Perfect.
I'll get
They're
him
all
at it. Yeah.
perfect.
Those are some good
Please
good
do.
ideas.
But yeah, I think hands down it's his best movie.
Yeah.
Monsters was an incredible achievement because apparently he did all the effects work himself on a fucking laptop.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I watched that movie knowing that, and knowing that like carries the movie a lot. Where it's like it's an okay movie, but just knowing how many hats this one man wore, with how little resources, it's very impressive in that way. And in fact, it got him the Godzilla gig. Um, Weird side note: the presentation of the narrative in Godzilla 2014 is more closely aligned with the Gamera movies from the 90s than it is most Godzilla movies, and I've always found that very curious.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
it's stylistically the way that the story is conveyed is much more similar to those
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I do need to check out those. That's something that I need to
movies, which are very
check off the list because I haven't watched
very
any.
good. So it's like if you're, it's usually very straightforward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that Monsters is fine. Rogue One I've only seen once, I think, um, and I liked it, but I don't know, something towards the end it starts to lose me a little bit, and there's just
Yeah.
some weird chintzy moments in there that just feel like they needed to be workshopped a little bit in terms of like how we're doing things. There's just some weird character work, some beats that just don't feel as cohesive as the rest of the movie. And yeah, the creator, I didn't like that movie that much. I'm sorry to report. Like, it just didn't
Yeah.
didn't do it for me.
The effects were still good though. The effects were still good. but everything else
And
just
it carried
didn't
that
work.
tradition of his of doing a lot with a little. Although they did,
Yeah.
did you hear about the controversy? They did land in some hot water.
No, I don't think so. No.
Well, the whole marketing blitz behind the movie was playing up the fact that they spent comparatively little money on the effects work, but there's so much of it and it's so high quality that it was like baffling. It's like, oh wow, you can do this. It's a big sea change in the world of Hollywood and stuff. But they they landed in some hot water because apparently, like during the prologue, I think when they're showing like how we got to where we're at, one of the buildings that blows up is actual footage of a real terrorist attack,
Mm.
and people were not happy about that. It's like, hang on, you lifted like real news footage of a real tragedy for your movie and put a little bit of CGI on top of it. It's like that's not cool. People died.
Yeah.
Like that footage is of people dying. Like maybe don't do that.
Yeah. That's I mean, all you can say that the only good thing you can say about that is I guess it did keep the budget down. That's all you can. It's the only good thing
I
you can
mean,
say
that's
about
why
it.
they did it, but it's like, in this day and age, it's like maybe find a better way or find a
Who
different
wrote
way.
off on that? Is that Gareth?
He was the director, so I imagine.
Gareth said, trust me, I've got so many YouTube videos we can pull from. You'd be surprised at the crazy shit you can find on there." He's like, "Don't worry."
Well, his movie came out 2, 3 years too early because now they would just use an AI representation of
Yeah.
that, like just
Yeah.
an interpretation of that same angle and shot or something. But
Yeah.
anyway, good pick, excellent pick, in fact. So
Thank
I'll
you.
try to
Yeah.
be quick. I'll try to be quick with my next pick here, and then I guess we can wrap things up here. What have I got? What do I got? What do I got? Want to get a white guy in here? I haven't had a white guy yet.
I've had nothing but white guys, I think.
Yeah,
Well, I guess
yeah.
yeah, I
Maybe you
mean,
balance me out, Brad. You bring white guys to the table. We need. Inevitably, most conversations will veer into white guy territory, so it's important to
yeah.
acknowledge.
I did have a
Uh,
non-American at least. I did have an Italian. I did have a non-American. So
Yeah,
but
yeah, okay. We're diversifying here. So, okay, so I'm just gonna do the requisite white guy pick because I should have at least one. Yes. Um, oh, that's a bug. Get out of here, bug. Okay, so I have here in my hand a stack of a bunch of movies from a guy who hasn't directed that many movies, but he's the king of the world, Brad. So I have here the Terminator anthology on Blu-ray, which of course he directed the first two films, Terminator and Terminator 2: Judgment Day. Also have Aliens on 4K, the controversial 4K, which uses the AI upscale technology or whatever. We have The Abyss on 4K, which I think looks quite handsome. I actually don't have a problem with the way Aliens disc looks. I'm going to be keeping my Blu-ray, but I do actually like the look of that 4K just fine. I have True Lies on 4K, which looks like dog shit. Tom Arnold is so frightening to look at in this
yeah.
movie. If you haven't watched it, you need to see it because, good God, that he looks like he looks like an action figure. He looks like one of those Hot Toys 1/6 scale action figures they make of like Hollywood characters and stuff. It's terrible. Titanic on 4K. Avida on Blu-ray, which you can find this super duper special edition Blu-ray everywhere in every like bargain bin ever on the planet because I guess they over manufactured it or something. Then Avida, Way of Water. So of course the man in question is the king of the world, James Cameron himself. James Cameron began as a artist and production designer on a lot of Roger Corman films, if memory serves. So he came from that world, doing production design and set design, prop design, things of that nature. He would end up going on to do Piranha 2, The Spawning, which Brad has on Blu-ray. I do not and have
Hmm.
not seen it, although I know it's not good, but it would probably be nice to be able to put it on the shelf just to have it, just
Yeah.
round out the collection. Um, but yeah, James Cameron's contribution to film is immeasurable. He makes, for the most part, really excellent films, and he's made an ungodly amount of money making them. Um, and a lot of that, I think, just has to come from probably just like sheer force of personality. He is kind of renowned as being like kind of like a super intense guy on the set. Like he will push people to their human limits. Many people have almost died on the set of James Cameron films, including very big name actors like Kate Winslet. But I think that's a huge part of like where the success comes from, is just that drive, that ambition to shoot for the stars and just keep pushing. Because so many of these movies, Titanic especially, Avatar especially, um, just shoot for the moon and well beyond, in every regard. In every regard. So it's kind of interesting because, like, from a visual standpoint, especially kind of these days, like, there's a certain like plainness to his movies that they're not ultra flashy in terms of design work. Maybe the Avatar movies are a little bit more fanciful, but even then, they're not that outrageous. Like his designs feel like they're very intentionally like pushed through a mold of some sort to make them approachable and like unsophisticated in a comfortable way.
Yep.
Because like even the design of like the T-800 in Terminator has a sleekness to it that it's like Kyle and I talked about that design earlier today. In fact, I was recording earlier today, and just how it feels like a distillation of like the perfect distillation of robot skeleton. Like if you picture in your mind's eye what that would be, there it is. Like, and it doesn't have any frills, it doesn't have any ornaments to it or like gaudy extraneous elements. It's very refined, I guess is what I'm going for, which sometimes translates as like a little bit boring. Not that like his movies are boring from a visual standpoint. They're shot by some of the most talented people in the world and look fantastic, but even like the color palette of Terminator 2, there's always that question floating around the back of my head where it's like, why is everything so gray and blue? Like what it has this like cold, sleek quality to it that feels very intentional, and maybe that's the secret to his success, is like aiming slightly more broad than like some of the, like, for fuck's sake, like this guy, Keita Amemiya, like he's advertising himself through his work. Like it is his art that he's putting on display for you. James Cameron designed the Terminator. He did some of the early concept sketches. I don't know if you've seen them, Brad, but he did a concept art of Lance Henriksen as the Terminator character. So it's like the half face, or like half of it is the endoskeleton, the other half is Lance Henriksen's face. He was one of the early picks for the Terminator character, along with O.J. Simpson. Actual Terminator O.J. Simpson. Yeah. So he clearly has a design background. He has that tool set. He has those instincts. But he, like, maybe part of the success of his instincts is to know when to throttle back and make it less about showing, like, strutting his stuff and showing his particular visual flavor, and just doing what works, or like refining things down to what is most approachable. Anyway, yeah, that's James Cameron.
I think he knows how to hit, the mass market. Like he knows what people want, and he knows how to deliver it. He, like you said, he's not going to do anything overly flashy. Like he's like a guy who can make a really good steak. Like it's, nothing overly fancy, but it's going to be a damn good steak, and you're going to, every what 10 years you'll want to try that steak again. It'll absolutely be worth it. So yeah, I'm not the biggest James Cameron fan, but I mean the guy is undeniably talented. And I mean I would say, for again, I still have yet to see The Abyss or True Lies, actually. So I've still got a few I need to see, but I love Aliens. Obviously, Terminator, Terminator 2 are great. Piranha 2 is amazing. He's a gifted filmmaker. There's no denying it.
Yeah, it's difficult to like put a particular style. It's funny because a lot of the recurring motifs in his films, like mama bears. He's big on his mama bears. He likes his strong ladies who maybe have to learn to be strong over the course of the narrative. Like you see that in Titanic. You definitely see that in Aliens, is where kind of even the first Terminator, like Sarah Connor, kind of fits into that archetype. Ripley in Aliens gets promoted into that territory in that film. Rose from Titanic follows the same narrative structure kind of as Ripley. Like if you just look at the things that she does, she goes back for Jack, Ripley goes back for Newt. Like it's the same beats. Like he does retread a lot of the same beats. That is something that you'll find common across a lot of his films. But beyond that, like it's hard to fully pin him down. But he does have certain like tropes or like things that he wants to see recur in his films. But Aliens is like one of the most influential movies ever made. Same goes for Terminator. Titanic broke every box office record ever, and if you ask me, is a very, very, very good film. I enjoyed it quite a lot. The girlfriend saw it for the first time a few months ago. She enjoyed it quite a lot. Um, but something about like his stylistic sensibilities makes it hard to like point to him as like a favorite director.
Yeah.
But some of his movies are my favorite movies, and most people's favorite movies, honestly. So it's weird thing. It's a very strange thing because yeah, I would never cite him as like my favorite director anywhere near. But Aliens and Terminator 2 are some of my favorite movies. Very strange.
He's the king, baby. King of the box office, that's for sure.
I'm the king of the world. I've been married 5 times. Or some shit. Okay, so I think that's it for picks because Brad has to catch a movie. So I want to make sure you're able to do that. So let's head into the speed round here. So Brad, would you care to go first, or would you like me to spearhead things here?
I can go first. I don't have a ton here, and
Okay.
at least 2 of these are real loose.
All
But
right. So folks, we're just gonna skim through the things that we set aside that we didn't talk about in earnest. So we'll try to be quick here.
the one that is maybe actually probably the best pick of any of my picks, but I feel like we've talked about it a ton. I didn't really feel like getting into it, but it is Pumpkinhead, directed by Stan Winston, which I think is his only film he directed. Correct?
I think he may have done Wolf Creek. Could be wrong on that.
The one about the guy in Australia.
He has directed at least one other movie. Not one that I've seen, but I'm pretty sure he's done at least one other movie.
Yeah.
Or is it like Wrong Turn maybe?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, check what if he directed Wolf Creek. I gotta watch that one again. But I don't think that was him. I could maybe.
I think it may have been Wrong Turn is what I'm thinking, but I'll look
Okay.
it up
Okay.
as you're talking here.
Okay. So that one, obviously, Stan Winston. He's a legend. Another one who somebody who got their start in animation, I believe, at Disney. From the little bit of research I did, Tim Burton.
Yeah.
And obviously he's a very visual filmmaker. I actually don't own a ton of Tim Burton movies. I have a few. I grabbed Edward Scissorhands. I'm not the biggest fan of the movie, but the visuals are great. Yeah, obviously his early work is where it's at. Like,
I'll
we could
pause
go.
you for 1 second, Brad.
Yeah.
I do also have Timmy B picks. Stan Winston also directed A Gnome Named Norm. Norm spelt with a G, by the way. Guns N' Roses, You Could Be Mine. That would be the Guns N' Roses song that John Connor plays in Terminator 2. He did the music video for that, by the way.
Okay.
T2 3D Battle Across Time. That was the Universal Studios, I think, stage show. Apparently, he directed some part of that. Ghosts, a short he directed, and also Michael Jackson, Ghosts, a music video. So he's done a couple of music videos, but I guess I'm wrong. Maybe he didn't do any other features aside from A Gnome Named Norm.
I was gonna say Wolf Creek. I was like, that doesn't seem like it fits his
I
vibe, but
I think it was Wrong Turn that I was thinking of, and I
yeah.
think maybe he just did the makeup effects for it.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. Did you want to say what Tim Burton ones you had, or?
No, proceed. Go.
Okay. I actually don't know. The, the only thing I got on this was from Reddit. Somebody said this guy started as a visual effects guy. I couldn't really find anything too concrete on his like Wikipedia and IMDb. It looks like he'd done like some DVD menus, maybe. I don't even know. But I'm talking Wes Ball, who it would make sense that he started in visual effects because he did direct the new Planet of the Apes movie. But I have his first 2 films. I think his first 2 films. Yeah, he directed both of these. I have the first 2 Maze Runner movies, classics. Which I actually do kind of like the first Maze Runner. I think it's pretty good for the young adult trend of like every young adult sci-fi dystopian novel was getting adapted at this time. I actually think the
Yeah.
concept of this one is
When
pretty
Harry
good.
Potter was winding down, we were reaching
Yeah.
for everything off the shelf.
And Hunger Games was huge, so it was like, what do we have that's Hunger Games-esque? Like, there was a Divergent, a lot of
Oh
other
fuck,
ones.
they didn't even finish that one.
No, they gave up, yeah. This one actually did get finished. I haven't seen the 3rd one. I've seen the 1st one and the 2nd one. 2nd one really didn't do much for me, but the 1st one's pretty solid. I do like the 1st one.
I'm not gonna lie, Brad. I haven't seen any of those movies, but every time you bring them up, I can never tell if you're being ironic or not when you're showering them with praise.
Well,
I still can't, honestly.
you'll have to, watch it yourself and find out.
That's the nature of Brad, folks. You can never tell when it's a bit or when it's not.
Would I purchase the Blu-rays for a bit? And the answer to that is yes.
Yes,
Did I purchase them for a
100%.
bit? Yeah, that's what we don't know. Yeah.
Brad would move heaven and earth for a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Go to your grave for a bit. Just like, nope, never reveal. A magician never reveals his secrets.
I love the Maze Runner movies. Yeah. And then the last one, this one is maybe the loosest because I tried to do research to see if the guy was involved in any of the animation or character designs. I have to assume he was. But the guy is Craig Zobel, who is one of the creators of the website, the Flash series, homestarrunner.com.
Oh no
Um,
shit.
and I tried to do a little. The Homestar Wiki is not loading for me, but according to the Google preview, he did create several of the characters. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he at least came up with some of the visual design of those characters. But Craig Zobel, he directed a few movies. I talked about a couple of them before, but I have The Hunt here, which he did
Oh.
with Damon Lindelof, and they both actually worked together on the Leftovers. So I actually really like Craig Zobel. I do like Homestar Runner, and he did Compliance, which I think is great. I think this movie, I've only seen it the one time, but I actually think it was underrated. Like I was kind of went in thinking like, man, everyone's kind of thinking this is not good, and I actually kind of really enjoyed it. I mean, I really like Damon Lindelof, and I like his writing and his ideas. Um, and I'm a fan of this one. I think it's solid.
Yeah, no, the Hunt I watched on a date night with a girlfriend, like kind of early on.
Hmm.
And yeah, we both kind of enjoyed it. I blind bought that DVD or Blu-ray, excuse me.
Yeah.
Betty Gilpin was really good in that.
Yeah, she was a
Like
lot of
she
fun. She was good.
kind of surprised she doesn't do more. Like she had that show recently where she plays a nun or something about
And
the
that
AI.
actually that's a Damon Lindelof show.
Oh no shit!
I haven't
It
watched
looked
it yet.
really interesting, but
Yeah.
nobody's talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of came and went. I think because it was on Peacock, unfortunately.
Ah,
But yeah, I need to watch that cuz I do love Damon Lindelof so much.
yeah, I know you're he's from Lost, correct? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of like his
Lost,
big
The
claim to fame.
Leftovers, he did the Watchmen miniseries, which I thought was great.
Was he
Um,
involved in Prometheus?
he wrote Prometheus,
Yeah,
which I'm a
yeah,
huge fan of. I mean, the guy,
yeah,
me and him, we are just like simpatico. Like we are just, he is my guy.
yeah. Me, not so much from what I can tell, but he's as far as I can tell, he's riding very high right now. Like
Yeah.
he's
Oh
coming
yeah.
off of some really strong projects.
Hmm.
I think he wrote uh, a Wolverine comic that I read a long time ago. It was like Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk, and it was
Yeah.
like notorious for being this comic that took an ungodly amount of time to. It was like 4 issues, Brad, and it took
Yeah.
years to get out there. It's like, what the fuck is happening here? It's like Damon's busy. He can't get the new pages out.
He's a busy
Sorry,
guy.
he's a busy guy doing much more important things than shitty Ultimate Marvel comics.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, speed round. I'll try to be quick here, Brad. Get you out of here. So you mentioned Timmy B. Let's start with Timmy B. So, of course, as Brad had mentioned, got his start in the animation world, has done concept art that is loosely utilized in his own films. Like, for instance, the unproduced, the unmade, the Death of Superman movie with Nicolas Cage. I've seen his concept art for that is very much from his hand, like it's done in his style. And funny enough, some of the designs that he did for that look like they were transposed onto Mars Attacks. Very much so. Like some of those concept arts definitely look like they got used elsewhere, which is a common thing that happens. Like, for instance, one of the designs done for, again, the unproduced Hodorowski's Dune ended up being used in Prometheus, I believe. Like the structure, one of the buildings, like one of the main buildings featured in the background of that movie. Anyway, but yeah, Tim Burton worked for Disney as an animator for a very long time. Early on, but we have Beetlejuice on 4K. Love Beetlejuice. Saw the second full trailer for the new one, Brad. Still not feeling it. Still kind of worried.
I would say I'm even more worried after that trailer, to be honest.
I think so. After having seen more of it, it's. Although we did confirm, Perv Dad is dead.
Yes,
Jeffrey Jones we killed him. He's out of the movie. He's out of the picture. Batman and Batman Returns. Batman Returns especially is amazing. It is maybe my favorite Batman movie. One of my favorite movies, just in general. I adore that movie. Edward Scissorhands. Brad already held this one up. Danny Elfman's score for that movie is so beautiful, and it is much more interesting to look at and listen to than it is to experience. Like the narrative's kind of. I mean, almost all of his movies are about outsiders / misunderstood artists who are exploited and then ostracized. And Edward Scissorhands is maybe the most straightforward and pointed iteration of that, which is kind of charming. It does work as like a fairy tale kind of. And then Ed Wood, one of my favorite movies of all time. So it says a lot that Timmy B, as much as we talk shit about the man, has made maybe two or three of my favorite movies ever. Mm-hmm. Ed Wood is a special movie. I put this on when I'm feeling creatively drained or if I'm a little bit lost. There's just something inspiring about it. It's very funny too. And then Big Eyes. I should probably sell this because this movie sucks. But it's, very much a Timmy B movie. Just not very good. Pumpkinhead from Stan Winston. Brad already talked about this one. In fact, Inside Baseball. This was the movie that Kyle and I talked about 5 minutes before I hopped on with Brad.
There we go. There we go.
So I've said a lot about Pumpkinhead today. I'm not about to add to that right now. Crimson Peak and Pacific Rim, both on Blu-ray. This is an Arrow disc. It's got the clear business. Both from Guillermo del Toro. I don't know actually if he worked as an artist in the film industry, but I do know that he is well known for keeping sketchbooks on almost all of his productions. In fact, you can buy copies of his sketchbooks because they're just filled with drawings of ideas and concepts that find their way in some fashion into his finished films. I have here. Sorry. I have Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This movie's kind of shit, but at the time the CGI animation was groundbreaking. This was like the most amazeballs fucking thing when it came out. This came out, I think, the first year I was in college. One of my dorm mates pirated it. That's how I saw it for the first time. But this is directed by Tetsuya Nomura, who began as a character art person. Like he would do design and character art, concept art basically for Squaresoft, for now Square Enix, one of the most famous Japanese video game companies out there. And over time, he was promoted to full ass director of the company basically. So now he's been directing the Final Fantasy series of games for years, and he ended up directing that film. A lot of people disagree with some of his ideas. I actually am not a huge fan of him. I like his art to a point. Around the time we get into Kingdom Hearts and stuff, it's buddy, chill out with the buckles, man. Make the feet smaller and chill out with the buckles.
Yeah.
Gareth Edwards, Godzilla on 4K. Brad already talked about that one.
You got the 4K though. I don't. That's embarrassing.
It came out many years after the fact though, so I don't blame you. This was a late arrival 4K. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But this was a gift from Kyle. It's apparently I think it's a French Canadian Blu-ray. That a lot of the Blu-rays that he gets me, Brad, are French Canadian for some reason. Maybe they're cheaper or something. A movie that I know one of your buddies is a big fan of. Bobby, Labyrinth.
Oh yes, yes, yep.
And I find it very curious, Brad, that both your Bobby and my Kyle call it the Labyrinth. Both of these men,
that is
both of these
interesting.
men who love this movie call it the Labyrinth.
Yeah,
It is not the Labyrinth. It is simply Labyrinth.
it's so good that it's the only labyrinth. That's why. Like there can like it's like it's like the Eiffel Tower. Like
Yeah. I just think it's so cute that they both, like,
that
independent
is
of one
funny.
another, both
Yeah,
call
that
it.
is interesting.
Yeah, I had never seen it before, so Kyle insisted. He was like, "You have to see the Labyrinth," so he bought it for me. The Guyver, a movie that, spoiler alert, we'll probably be talking about this month. This is directed by Screaming Mad George, who is a makeup effects artist who's worked on the Nightmare on Elm Street series of movies and pretty much anything involving bugs and goopy shit from the 90s in American cinema. He directed that. Spawn, directed by Mark A.Z. DePay, who's done nothing else as a director, as far as I know. We did a full ass review of this for the show. Mark DePay is a visual effects artist. He worked in the realm of CGI, and this movie was the whole point of this movie was let's put a bunch of computer animation on the screen and call it good. We have Jinro, the Wolf Brigade. I think we did a review of this one for Anime August, which has since been retired. Kyle just cannot stomach that shit. He was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is directed by Hiroyuki Okiura, who he is an assistant director, an animator, and he has directed maybe 2 movies. This movie is phenomenal. This is excellent. It's kind of amazing to me that he hasn't directed more movies because this one's kind of special.
Yeah.
And the animation quality, of course, is fantastic. And then to close things out, I have here the 1-2 punch of Shin Gojira, Shin Godzilla, and Shin Ultraman. Both of these movies, I believe, the former is co-directed by both Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi. And Shin Ultraman, I believe, is merely produced and supervised by Anno, but directed by Shinji Higuchi. And both of them, because they come from the Japanese film industry, came up through different facets of the film industry before they reached like director status. Both of them worked as artists. Anno very famously worked at Studio Ghibli for a minute there. He did some animation work for Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind. He did the God Warrior, the Melting God Warrior, and it's very much his style that feels a little bit out of place in the rest of the movie, but it's like, oh, he showed up, okay. But like he got started doing that, and then he moved on to full ass directing status, and then of course he gave us the Evangelion series of movies, including the white one. There's like the super duper 4K of the last movie, and he's since Hideaki Anno has since gone on to become like one of the biggest voices in like mainstream like blockbuster Japanese cinema. Like really, he's kind of the guy. He has the keys to every castle. He's got Godzilla, he's got Ultraman, he's got Kamen Rider. What else are we going to give this guy? Are we going to give him Detective Conan or something, or One Piece? Wow, that would be interesting. Him doing One Piece.
Why not? Give him everything.
That'd be a very different One Piece. That'd be a very sad One Piece, probably. Very, very sad One Piece.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was all my picks. Good speed round, Brad. Actually, somewhat speedy for a change. So here comes the part of the show, Brad, where I get to say thank you for joining me today. This was fantastic. I'm really very happy that we were able to squeeze it in before the end of the month. It is one of my favorite things to do.
I love doing it, and yeah, I think we both did solid. I was a little worried I was going to limp through this, but I think we both did good.
Oh man, you had some excellent picks. Like you really, in the short amount of time you had to prepare, you really thought about it. Yeah, me too. But all right, so stream complete. So now comes the part, Brad, where hey, would you care to let the folks at home know where you can be found on the internet? Like, where can they
Yeah,
find your super
so
awesome
you can
podcast?
find me on social media. The podcast is the Cinema Speak podcast. We're on X at the Cinema Speak, Instagram Cinema Speak podcast, on YouTube as Cinema Speak, and you can find us on the web at cinemaspeak.libsyn.com.
Very nice. Thank you for that. And as for myself, you can find us, all of our Catching Up on Cinema content. You can find all of that collected on our website at catchinguponcinema.com. You can also find us on the social medias in the form of the Twitter at Catching Cinema. That's also X, by the way, in case anybody's actually made that switch over from Twitter to X. You can also find us on the Instagram at Catching Up on Cinema. And yeah, if you'd like to follow us at either of those, I would really appreciate it. But yeah, that being said, we're done here. So it is time to say goodbye. So, hey, Brad, let's say bye to the folks at home. Thanks for joining us today.
Yep.
So
Thanks
long.
for watching and or listening or both or whatever. Thank you.